Okay, so I saw this video on YouTube from CBS News, and it asked this question: is the shift in American work culture of valuing life over working more creating lower productivity? And I figured, as a recovering workaholic, this is a great topic for me to respond to. Let's watch.
So it's not uncommon for employers to think happy workers are more productive, but that might not be the case. Experts say the American workforce is shifting towards valuing life over working more, and this could be leading to a lower productivity for employees. For more, let's bring in Greg. He is the chief economics commentator for the Wall Street Journal. Greg, Anne-Marie and I are looking forward to this conversation.
So I think that the pandemic really had this major effect on how we all think about work and career. I mean, first of all, we came face to face with this deadly event, and I think that probably gave us all a greater appreciation of just the pleasure of living and being with our family and so on. And then the switch to remote work made a lot of us aware of what was possible, that you didn't actually have to fight it out in a daily commute, get dressed up, put on your makeup and go to work every single day. And that you could perhaps achieve a better work-life balance by mixing your life requirements, whether it's going to the gym or picking kids up from the office, better with going to work. And so we see this in polls now, where we see that workers, when they're negotiating with their employers, will often prize flexibility and hours over pay.
It's funny. He's saying that now people are just now starting to say that. Millennials have been saying that the whole time, and you made it seem like we were the worst at working. We were lazy. You just ragged on millennials for years and years and years because we had a different value system behind work and the place that it was supposed to be in our lives. And for even the workaholic person like me, I still knew that I wanted flexibility, and you cut that down as well. It didn't matter how much work I did, it was never enough. So it's not just about the pandemic. These are things that we've been saying the whole time, but it helped that the pandemic allowed employers, older generations to actually stop and recognize that the way that we've done work so far is not the only way that work can be done. Okay, a little rant. Let's get back to it.
There was a survey earlier this year by the Conference Board that found that worker satisfaction was the highest since they began asking the question in 1987. And when you dug deeper, you find the biggest contribution to that happiness was an increase in work-life balance. The smallest increase was interest in their work.
That's funny. So the reason I find that funny is because on one hand, when we think about workaholism, a lot of it was grounded in wanting to have more impact in our jobs, wanting to know that we were touching, feeling, getting to see the impact that our work was doing. And that is changing as well. Now, I'm not saying that people are completely ditching the idea of having impact in the world, but we're shifting from making impact the goal, and instead we're showing up in our lives and we're showing up to the world and just being ourselves, knowing that that is going to be the impact. If we have the opportunity to actually just show up and be ourselves, that's when the real magic happens.
Question, because our lead-in was that this is leading to lower productivity from employees, right? That's right. That's right. I'm pretty sure that I can Google right now and come up all manner of studies that indicate that a happy employee with a healthy work-life balance, in fact, more productive, stop. All those people who are working from home are not happy with you right now.
She right. If I had to go back to a corporate job, I would be upset too. I don't know if you've seen in the comments of videos that talk about soft living, some of the things that people dread, like we had the Monday scaries. That was always a thing. But now it's being exasperated by literally dreading going into work. Stressful outbreaks, panic attacks, high blood pressure, all of these things, because we know that we have to go back to the office. How is that not a part of this conversation? How is the effects of the stress and the culture that being in the office, and I'm not saying this conversation ends at just not going back into the office. It also needs to be a conversation of how we change corporate culture in itself so that it doesn't have to be so toxic, that it doesn't have to be such a rat race. and that we get to do our work in an environment that is a lot less stressful and allows us to do our work, but not take so much away from us that we can't enjoy our life once we leave.
Explain it to me, because I'm sure we've covered studies that indicate the opposite.
So what's interesting is that at the very start of the pandemic, there were a bunch of studies that found that people, for example, who work in call centers or who wrote software code were actually getting more accomplished while they were at home. But I think what we now know is that a lot of that was because while you were stuck in lockdown, there was nothing else to do. So you worked more.
I guess yes, but I don't necessarily believe that is the cause and why we have moved away from working more. I think it's just this switch in values, but I cut him off. I'm sorry, I interrupted him. Let's let him finish his thought.
2 years later, we've had more time to evaluate it. And what we're discovering is that generally speaking, people at home, it's harder to communicate and coordinate with them. They want to work in the evening. Everybody else is working during the day. That there's less teamwork. There's less feedback. For example, software coders get fewer comments on their work when they work from home. And let's be honest, there's distractions at home.
So wait a minute. He started this by saying that the reason people got more work done during the pandemic was because they were stuck in the house and that they didn't have anything better to do. But then out of the other side of his mouth says, but when you're at home, you have more opportunity to be distracted. Okay, so are we distracted at home or are we more workaholics at home? I think that you're just trying to find anything that's going to stick. Then he moves on to say, it's not even those two things. It's that it's harder to communicate. It's harder to have feedback. It's harder to create structure and a culture that we've had before that, by the way, wasn't actually working. It's harder to maintain that same culture that we've had before when everybody is not in the office. And to me, I say, of course, but that's part of the change. We have wanted corporate America to evolve in the way that we work well before the pandemic happened, but no one wanted to listen. And now with this opportunity that the pandemic has afforded us, even for all of its bad, this opportunity to really challenge employers to think differently about work, to think differently about how they create their culture is an amazing opportunity that we can't waste. This is the time where we can say, it's time to rethink how we do work, how we communicate, how we become a team. Because if we're going to be honest, 9 times out of 10 in your corporate culture, there were silos anyway, and half of the people didn't feel like they were on a team anyway. But now all of that is being exasperated by the different shit that's happening. This was already a problem. You just didn't take the time to address it because it was easier to ignore it when everybody was in the office. You felt like you had control. You felt like you could micromanage it. And now you don't feel like you, meaning I'm speaking to employers, that you don't have that control anymore. So sorry, not sorry. It's a call to you as an employer to evolve, to change, to actually take a step back and look at your culture and really make a culture that's actually going to empower people to show up, work in a low stress environment that allows them to do their job well and make you more money. Let's just be honest. If you're willing to give it over the fact that it's never going to go back to the way it was, you get the opportunity to make something better, not just for you as a company, but for every single one of your employees. But okay, I cut him off again. Let me let this man finish talking.
Why not go for a run? Why not hit the fridge? Stuff like that. What I find fascinating, though, is the complete difference of opinion on the part of the workers and the bosses. This group at Stanford University, they asked people the question, how much more productive are you? Workers say they're 7% more productive at home. Their managers say they're 3% less productive.
Wow. I find that funny too, because I can think a lot of bosses that should not be bosses. And so your way of managing was not healthy when you were in the office. And now you do not have the opportunity to lead that same way when you can't just lean over someone's shoulder, where you can't show up behind them or do whatever tactics that you had before. And now you're having to learn to lead in a new way. You're having to grow as a leader. And that is why you're like, well, they're not doing as much as they've done before. It's easy to use that as a scapegoat, but you're the leader. That's the whole goal of leadership, is that you get to empower your team, that you get to lead your team to victory. But that starts with you being a good leader. So I'm going to need you to show up and figure out how to best lead your team now that you have new challenges, because really that is your whole job as a leader. Figuring out how to break down the roadblocks and how to set your team up for success so that you can win the day, succeed together, and lead a successful team. Your job is to figure out how to clear all of those things away so that your team can do that. But we're not talking about that. None of this is coming up, right? Okay. All right.
Oh, I mean, I think people who work from home would arguably tell you they can't turn it off. They can't close the computer. So they're constantly working.
Yeah.
Listen, the pandemic for me brought about a complete mind shift. Okay.
Yes. He better speak on that workaholic mind shift change. It's time. It is so time for this to happen. And I'm so glad that it's coming up more and more in the conversation. Okay. I just got excited.
Personal life is now as important to me as my professional life, and it used to be totally imbalanced. So
wait, before he moves on, he just said something so important. Before, it was totally imbalanced. And here's the thing, because that was the culture that we lived in before, we allowed it. We knew that it was imbalanced, but we allowed it because we thought that on the other side of working hard, of working more, of doing all the things, that we were finally going to get to the point where we were thriving, when we would have freedom. But then the pandemic helped us see there's no pathway that is workaholism, that's hustle culture, that's toxic productivity, that ever is going to get us to a soft life, to work-life balance, to truly enjoying our lives. Because instead, we're exchanging work for actually living the values, actually living the life that we want to live. And people are realizing that. And they're saying, no more. And we should be.
So, I mean, who would you say has the upper hand on this?
So right now, it's clearly the worker. Look, we are in a historically high labor market. The unemployment rate at 3.5%, that tied to the lowest in over 50 years. There's like 1 to 1.5 vacant jobs for every unemployed person. And even though a lot of employers are skeptical of the value of working from home and greater flexibility, they find they have no choice that to hold on to their best workers, they kind of have to offer that.
Yep.
And this sort of explains this paradox about why happy workers are more productive. It's not that being happy makes you more productive. It's that if you're productive, your employer has to give you more things that you want to keep you happy. And those things might include letting you have more time off. So surveys show that way more employers are offering paid time off, way more employers are offering parental leave, way more employers are offering the option to work from home. And it shows up in data that suggests that the average employee works fewer hours than they did before the pandemic.
Here's the amazing thing about that. It took the pandemic to force employers, corporate culture in the United States of America to give the same work-life balance benefits that the rest of the world has already realized. That's a sad thing. We call ourselves progressive, but man, at what cost? And are we actually progressive when we're progressing on work, but we're losing our lives?
Interesting. I don't know what to make of this, of your observations, but I'll take it. I mean, we did do a story recently about how the concept of the weekend is changing a little, David, and how it's kind of bleeding into like Friday afternoon, Monday, a slow start, partially because of our ability to work from home and to kind of work from wherever. So maybe you might, take a long weekend. You're still working on Friday, but perhaps not as hard. So,
I mean, didn't Tim Ferriss, the author of the 4-Hour Work Week, say that years ago? Like, haven't we all been figuring out how to do more in the hours that we have so that we can live life more? Before, we felt like it was mandatory, like we didn't have a choice to take more time on Friday, to actually take our vacation. I mean, the statistics on how America is the least likely for employees to take their vacation time. But now the pandemic has helped us see that's a whole bunch of poppycock, that we actually should take advantage of every single one of those benefits, because we're not going to earn them or get to freedom or get to our soft life or get to work-life balance any other way than actually using every single one of those benefits benefits and not only using them, but pushing corporate America to actually take the practices of other way healthier cultures outside of the US and elevating their standards and their practices to that level. It's time. It's just been a long time coming. This ain't a new thing. It's just been a long time coming.
I always vote for happy.
And I know we're out of time, but I think employers are losing the upper hand on this because I think as the workforce continues to shift, Greg, I think workers are going to continue to have the upper hand.
And we should take advantage of the upper hand. We've been fighting this challenge. Millennials specifically, man, I'm rooting for you, all of us. Like we have been waiting for this day when we could finally get a leg up and say, work needs to change. We've been chanting it this whole time, and now's the time. Now we have the upper hand. So negotiate what you need. Negotiate the extra time for your family, the extra vacation, the extra parental leave. Take time for career breaks. Take time to take care of your health, to get surgeries, disability. Take time to actually take care of yourself. Because this is the time to get it. Because employers don't have a choice but to listen. They need you. For a long time, we were under the understanding that employees needed employers. But now employers, in order to keep their revenue goals, in order to make the money that they've always made, they need us. So now it's time to ask for what we want because this is the best time to get it. Don't hold back.
Yeah, just one last point. There's a lot of economists who think that once we have a recession, and one day we will have a recession, leverage will switch back.
Okay. Yes, of course we will have a recession. It's a part of the financial cycle that happens. Like, let's not get into the doom and gloom. We are going to have ups and downs in the financial market are a part of it. So please, let's stay out of the doom and gloom, okay?
Back at the employer and employees won't have it so good. I have to say, I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
I think that now that employees have seen how good things can be, they might be willing, for example, to give up that next pay raise in order to retain that flexibility.
Yeah.
Yes. This change of prioritizing money over everything else in life is going away. Where this is the whole shift that's happening because we're seeing so much more of the value of what it is to live my life now rather than preparing for a rainy day. And I understand in our history, we had a depression. We're talking about a recession, not a depression. We're not going into that economic bottom out where there's no food, there's no jobs, there's nothing. We're not even remotely close to that. So with that in mind, like we get to still ask for the things that we need. And that's okay. Like we should have been asking that before, where we chose to work harder and harder and harder because we never wanted to be in that place of a recession again. But now we're really not in the place where that would happen again. I'm not a financial guru, so don't take my whole mind on that. But we still have the upper hand, and that means we get the opportunity to take advantage of it.
I agree. I think we've seen a cultural shift.
Well, that's what I have to say about it. All in all, I really did love this video and the conversation. As a recovering workaholic, there's no way that I can go back to living that workaholic lifestyle. I have tasted the sweet, sweet nectar of freedom, not having to armor up, of not having to sacrifice my well-being, of not having to live with an unbearable amount of stress that was causing me high blood pressure, heart palpitations, and other physical impediments in order to go back to this corporate lifestyle that we had before. And so now I'm not willing to give that up. There's no way a corporate job can pay me enough to sacrifice that anymore. I've given that up. And now I would rather start my own business, which I personally, that was the pathway that I've taken. But even if I decided to go back into corporate America, I would hold off until I found a remote job that allowed me to use my different strengths and that had a team and corporate culture that really believed in empowering the people who work for them, regardless of whether they were in the office or at home, to be a team that works together for a mission that this company was built to do. So there's no way I can go back. There's no way I can go back to the dysfunction. Once you've had healing, once you've felt the other side, there's no way you can go back. So employers, I am encouraging you to figure it out. Not only for employees, but you have an opportunity to really change history, to make the culture in America be about something more than just work. Isn't that what made America great in the first place? Is that we had the opportunity to choose a life that that we wanted to live and that we got the opportunity to create it. You get to help bring that all back to the surface. I'm Rashida, a recovering workaholic and your dream strategist. And I am obviously obsessed and extremely passionate about helping workaholics make this transition from prioritizing this goal of making money to actually living a life that they love. Not saying that we won't work. That's not the goal. But changing your priorities means that it changes the way you live your life. And we all deserve to live a life that on our deathbed, we'll say every single bit of it was worth it. I would love for you to like, subscribe, and comment. And then go ahead and check out my channel trailer to learn the 5-step framework that I teach my clients on how to go from workaholic to soft life.